Great. We're here with Daniel, who went on the Chile education program. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi.
Can you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, I spent 3.5 months, almost 4 months in Chile. Well, actually, it was about 4 months because I ended up staying a couple weeks after. Um, the program focused primarily on education. We did field studies specifically. However, I really enjoyed the fact that about the first month was a big emphasis on classroom education in terms of learning about the system itself, but the second month focused primarily on field study, which was going to those classrooms, talking to principals, talking to the students themselves that were what we were discussing. However, there were other components to it that were really great, which had to do with national memory, for example, like visiting Museo de la Memoria, um, going and talking to women who were the mothers of disappeared people. Um, I liked multiple aspects, but like I said, the primary reason I really enjoyed it was that it integrated this classroom feeling with a field study feeling, which culminated in the ISP and being able to have my own independent project. However, I was given the tools through the program, classroom stuff, field, and then all right, take both those things and do them yourself. Um, However, I did receive help throughout, even though the object was to do it independently for the most part.
Great. And tell us more about your independent study project.
Yeah, my independent study focused primarily on student occupations. So in Chile, for the education movement to move forward, students were using the taking, so the occupation of their classrooms, as a primary tool to pressure the government. Um, However, that started in 2011, and in 2015, the how would I say this? The organization of those occupations were not going very well anymore, and were pretty ineffective for the most part. Instead of lasting 5 to 8 months, which was what they were lasting at the beginning, they started lasting 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month if lucky. They were lucky. And that really doesn't work in terms of pressuring the government. So my job was to reevaluate the programs and help them become more efficient again. And that was through visiting one school that had successfully navigated this huge downfall in terms of doing really, really well, and then all of a sudden everybody doing terribly, and they just kind of stayed steadily up top. So I watched that school, and then I watched another school that had basically gotten to the bottom, but was still considered to be one of those schools that were very active within this movement. So comparing, talking to principals, talking to the students themselves, talking to staff. I talked anywhere from the principal of the school to the vendor selling the snacks there about her perception of the school. I talked to finance directors at the school. I talked to students in classrooms that didn't have substitute teachers and were pretty honest with me about what is they saw in these schools that wasn't working, or schools that weren't helping them move forward. So really, it was just kind of an evaluation of what worked and what didn't work. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I did.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think makes SIT unique?
I think business IT. I think, obviously one of the big portions is this ISP project. Other than that, though, I think that this huge emphasis on experiential learning, I think, is deeply undervalued anywhere else for the most part. Because that, I can listen to lecture over and over, and I can read a million books. But when I hear a statistic, it doesn't mean much. I've heard statistics for 19 years about certain events and or occurrences throughout the world. But for example, when I heard 7 to 8 months for a school being taken over and didn't mean much, and then seeing the students who were affected by it, that made all the difference. Hearing them talk about that time made all the difference, which that was done through the ISP. So the experiential learning, dipped into the ISP, which really helps you make that connection from the books to the real life. Because I think right now it's this, and ISP makes it, what is it? SIT makes it this, which is what I think is important and deeply undervalued.
Great. And what did you think of the director?
I loved Roberto. Roberto was fantastic. He was, and he always reminding you that he was there and willing to help, which I think a lot of adults do. Um, but Roberto was actually there because it was the last month, the last week of my ISP project. You know, the week you essentially write the project you formulated, and I was having a hard time with one specific thing. However, Roberto, instead of just helping me with that one thing, said, "No, come back. Like we'll continue talking about your project. We'll continue discussing these things." So he didn't just want to help me with the one thing; he wanted to help me, you know, with the whole project, which was really nice to hear that I wasn't like a burden or annoying him during his this time, but really truly wanted me to be as good, do as well as I could do.
Great. And what did you think of the homestay family?
Oh, I love them. Mostly though, because they were so much like my family at home. Um, two 40-some-year-olds. My parents are both that age. Um, the brothers are 20, 18, and 17. I'm 21. My brother's 17, and my other one's 12. So it was like the party house too. People came over, friends came over. People like to hang out. That's exactly what my house is. It was always nice to know though that, for example, Claudia, which was a host mom, did know English. You know, for somebody who might have not known Spanish that well, she was always there to help you out if you needed it. They were. It was very clear that they've had other students before because they spoke slower, because they were willing to listen. So yeah, it didn't feel fake. It felt like they genuinely wanted me there, which was very nice.
Great. What do you think you got out of this experience?
Overall, I'd say it was pretty life-changing in terms of the way in which one sees the world. And by that, I mean a huge example, capitalist view of the world as opposed to socialist, communist view of the world. Living amongst communists or socialists in the US is not very common, at least not very openly expressed. Where in Chile, that was very open and very different to see and to talk about and to hear. For example, I'm taking Latin American politics class right now. It talks about dictatorship, and people hear dictatorship, and you read these things, and you read genocide, but it doesn't mean anything until you live with somebody who's been through it. So I think hearing those personal stories, being in those buildings and where like torture occurred, I think makes the connection that you have to have as a scholar. It can't just be you knowing facts and or having read books. And I think SIT allowed me the opportunity to make that connection.
Great. Is there anything else you want to say to students that are thinking about the program?
I'd say if you have like a deep interest, and it doesn't have a deep interest in education and just social justice in general, this is like the perfect program because it makes a good mix of it. Social justice mixed with education is really, really huge in Chile, especially because education is not considered like a human right, really. So this mix of social justice and education goes really well. And I really enjoyed the program. It wasn't just the homestay. It wasn't just Chile. It wasn't just the director. I think it was all of it put together.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.